Well, let's talk about this fact because you hear so much that like Trump and Biden are the same and Biden's a fascist just like Trump's a fascist. But then why do the real fascists really want Trump? Right? Why do all of these these supervillains basically Elon Musk and his former PayPal partner who's completely funding JD Vance. So now it's the dream team of the two South African expats, right? The two South African expatriates who are now kind of controlling our politics and the politicians they want. We should want the politicians they don't want. And so I'd ask everybody that says like Biden and Trump are the same. If they're the same, why do all these really evil rich guys want Trump? Why is that? Why would Elon Musk spend hundreds of millions of dollars to get Trump elected if everything is the same? Because everything is not the same, right? And I think we should think long and hard about this fact. These people are dangerous. They're bad for democracy. They're bad for our lives. They are sociopaths with billions of dollars. When we really get into the things that his partner believes, for instance, let me read a little bit. I've read this before, but I'll read from The End of Reality by Jonathan Taplin, a must read for literally everybody that wants to actually understand what the oligarchs are up to. So here we go. Quote, "The disruptive power of social media was why Thiel so valued his position as Facebook's senior board member. Steve Bannon, who worked with Thiel on the Trump transition team in 2016, said, quote, Peter's idea of disrupting government is out there. People thought Trump was a disruptor. They had no earthly idea what was being pitched by Thiel, end quote. For instance, both candidates he identified to run the Food and Drug Administration, his Silicon Valley associates Jim O'Neill and Balaji Srinivasan, argued that the agency should dump its requirement that drugs be proven effective before reaching the market. Bannon and Thiel instrumentalized Facebook for Trump's regime by using a new form of propaganda. Bannon said, quote, the Democrats don't matter. The real opposition is the media, and the way to deal with them is to flood the zone with shit, end quote. The idea was not to convince people of a specific policy point, but to overwhelm them with disinformation to such an extent that they became disoriented, and reality lost all meaning. For many citizens, it was not a matter of denying the truth, but rather a deep weariness that the truth was even knowable. And of course, the new AI-driven ChatGPT will make it even easier to flood the zone. The New York Times' Ezra Klein notes, quote, and what unnerved me a bit about ChatGPT was the sense that we are going to drive the cost of bullshit to zero when we have not driven the cost of truthful or accurate or knowledge-advancing information lower at all, end quote. Of course, Bannon didn't invent this strategy. Dictators, starting with the mustache man and Mussolini, have refined it over the years. But Thiel realized, with Bannon's help, that it was no longer sufficient to proclaim, quote, liberty as your movement's North Star. You needed coercive state power to achieve your goals on immigration, banning abortion and pornography, and stopping the woke revolution around Black and LGBTQ social justice reform. But as British historian Jeff Ely points out, the fascism of 2022, quote, no longer relies as much on street fighting, pitched confrontations, imposing displays of paramilitary strength, and the spectacle of uninformed mass force. It operates rather by verbal onslaughts, internet trolling, instantly produced and transmitted visual incitements, and all the other virtual means of displaced but no less brutal assault, end quote. This is Bannon and Thiel's specialty, aided, of course, by Zuckerberg's Facebook and Musk's Twitter. John Gans, an American writer for The New Statesman, says Thiel is, quote, probably the most clearly fascist prominent figure in the United States today, including Trump, end quote. Thiel has always had an apocalyptic vision, one that assumed getting people to come over to his view of the future would take a backlash against globalization and a financial catastrophe. As the global economy began to melt down in 2008, he wrote, quote, the entire human order could unravel in a relentless escalation of violence, famine, disease, war, and death, end quote. For the next 8 years, Thiel railed against the Obama administration. By 2015, he grasped that Trump could be the vehicle to bring on the end times he so desired. And he realized that Facebook could be an ideal megaphone for Trump's, quote, American carnage vision. Curtis Yarvin, one of Peter Thiel's favorite bloggers, wrote that some people are, quote, more suited to slavery, end quote, than others. Yarvin leads the neo-reactionary movement, whose adherents believe that American democracy is a failed experiment and should be replaced by a monarchy, with the ruler similar to the CEO of a corporation. Though Thiel might not be willing to go that far publicly, Yarvin believed he had convinced Thiel that libertarianism was a doomed project without the inclusion of authoritarianism. He argued, quote, "We should get over our dictator phobia," end quote. After Thiel said that Republican members of Congress who voted for Trump's impeachment after the January 6 attacks were, quote, traitorous, Yarvin noted of Thiel, "He's fully enlightened, but just plays it very carefully." Looking forward to the 2024 election, Yarvin believes the Republican candidate, Trump or a Trump clone, should campaign on a specific mandate. If elected, "I'm going to assume absolute power in Washington and rebuild the government," end quote. Once that's done, Yarvin believes elite institutions like Harvard and the New York Times need to be closed down, and then we nationalize all local police and National Guard troops. Look at Cop City. Yarvin's law and order prescriptions are simple. A trivial database query can identify the set of humans in the country who are either A, productively employed, B, independently wealthy, or C, a well-supervised dependent of A or B. Everyone else, including all minors, gets the tag. This inconspicuous device fits on your ankle and continually reports your position to the authorities. If no crimes are committed near your location, you have nothing to worry about. Saddled with a large number of residents who are effectively dependents of the state, for example, those who receive housing subsidies. These people need to be reprocessed to determine whether they can become members of a productive society, and during this time there is no reason to leave them where they are. Therefore, we can expect to establish secure relocation centers in which the 20th century's artificially decivilized subpopulations will receive social services in a controlled environment while they are reintroduced to civilized society. To me, this is fascism, full stop. And so this is who is backing J.D. Vance, this is who is backing Trump, and this is what they're talking about. This is the modern equivalent of John Rockefeller saying, "I want a nation of workers, not thinkers." What they are actually trying to do is so dark and so outside of the pale of Americans' conceptions of what can and can't happen here that it's hiding in plain sight, and they're talking about it in plain sight. And so everybody should read The End of Reality. It's called How Four Billionaires Are Selling a Fantasy Future of the Metaverse, Mars, and Crypto. It's by Jonathan Taplin. And we should be very scared. We should be doing everything we can to prevent Donald Trump from taking power again.